Has President Cyril Ramaphosa quietly quit his job as President of South Africa? I'm starting to think he has. Now, for those of you that don't understand what quietly quitting means, it's something that became popular over the last couple of years. And it was as a direct result of COVID. It sort of became quite popular from 2022, and it's remained quite popular. And that is, the problem with COVID is it blurred the lines between your time, your own private time, and work time. You're working from home. Does that mean that I can call you at 8 p.m. to have a meeting? Or can I expect a report at 10 at night? Because you're at home anyway, and that's where you're working from. And a lot of people, in response to the pressure and this blurring of the lines, said, you know what, I am going to do the barest of minimum for this job. I'm not going to quit, because either I need the money, or alternatively, I've got a contract that I need to fulfill. So I'm still going to be available, but don't expect me to do more than what is the barest minimum for me to keep my job. And I think we are seeing the quiet quitting of our President Ramaphosa. And I've broken it down into a couple of areas where quite clearly he has quietly quit. Let's talk about the conversation that was all the rage a month or two ago. The much disputed, debated national dialogue. Our President Cyril Ramaphosa's favorite thing. This was going to be his Cadessa number 2 moment, where he's going to be the big decider sitting there stroking his beard as people presented these wonderful ideas through a whole lot of meetings. We're going to go to the people. They were going to come out with brilliant ideas, solve the country's problems through a national dialogue. And he will forevermore be known as the man that organized the national dialogue. Well, he struggled to get any backing for it. First, political parties, seeing the writing on the wall, seeing how unpopular this idea was, they didn't quietly quit, they quite loudly quit the national dialogue. Then many of the foundations, now these are the legacy foundations, the Desmond Tutu Foundation, the Nelson Mandela Foundation, the Steve Biko Foundation, I don't know, if ever you were once famous, somebody else decides to make a living out of your legacy by starting a foundation. They were the big movers behind the national dialogue, and they also quit the idea. And it was left with our champion, President Ramaphosa, that told us how good this national dialogue was going to be for us. And eventually, after a big fight about the price, where originally they wanted to spend nearly R1 billion on this thing, they got it down to 400 million, which is still a disgracefully large waste of money. But the national dialogue actually started. And boy, did it start in the most rocky way. Well, it started off with what can only be called a crazy speech by President Ramaphosa himself, where he wanted the national dialogue to discuss why hospitals don't have medication, even though the government runs those hospitals. He wanted the dialogue to discuss why there's gender-based violence and rampant crime when the state runs the police force. He wanted people out there to tell him why the economy is performing so poorly and so many people have got no future in the country, where he has single-handedly destroyed the small business sector in the first part of his presidency, and now he's destroying the larger part of the economy in the latter part of his presidency. But he wanted people to ask these questions. In any case, it starts off and it's a predictable mess. Everybody grabbing a microphone, people talking about their own interests, people parroting the same things, which we've heard 1 million times on every podcast, every news service, in Parliament, everywhere. We didn't need a national dialogue to know. But anyway, after the first sitting of the national dialogue or the national convention, the first one at UNISA, off it went, and we haven't heard from it since. President silent. Nothing. Quietly quit the national dialogue. The president has quietly quit foreign policy. South Africa has for years skated this very dangerous line where we were supportive of some people that weren't necessarily the best actors in the world. And it took diplomacy from our leaders to explain to big countries, why are you going to go and, sort of do military maneuvers with their enemies? But in any case, our foreign policy reached its peak crisis when Cyril Ramaphosa was called into the White House, shown pictures of farm murders, explained that South Africa isn't murdering white farmers, it's murdering everybody. But since then, we've seen a complete quitting of foreign policy by the president. Does anybody out there know what our foreign policy is? Because I look at these things all the time. I have no idea. It seems like we've got a policy of just whoever the West doesn't like, that's who we support. That's what it seems like. Then General Rudzani Mapanwa, the leader of our National Defense Force, the same organization that couldn't knock over a few rebels in the DRC and couldn't fly back because they don't have aircraft, pledges support to Iran. This is the same Iran that's busy bombing shipping lanes and costing the global economy billions in trade. But we're going to go and help them in the fight because apparently we're fighting against colonialism or something. We've had the USA debacle where we had Ibrahim Rasool appointed as our ambassador. He gets kicked out of the country. We then announced that Nkobisi Jonas is going to go there, but he's going to be a special envoy. The president's own spokesman ridicules Emma Powell from the DA when she says that the guy was denied entrance to the US, which seems to be exactly true. We've seen visits of delegations, AfriForum, a delegation led by Corné Mulder from the Freedom Front Plus. People have gone to the US. What are they going to do? They're going to do foreign policy because we don't know what our foreign policy is and nobody is running it. Now, you're the president of the country. This is pretty important. The world's in a fairly precarious position. Foreign policy matters. So they've put ourselves front and center of the international scene when we took Israel to the International Court of Justice. You know, you can't buy that kind of publicity. But since then, nothing. Everybody's waiting for the president to say something. All he could say was to Zimbabwe, well done on taking farms. It was really well done. That was a country that used to be an exporter of food, is now, depends on aid from other countries. But while this mess continues, where's the president? He's quietly quit foreign policy. Our economy. Probably the single biggest problem that we've got in South Africa is our massive unemployment rate. Zero growth. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the president, through some of his crazy policies, killed off small business in the first part of his term. COVID helped him along. Come along, after the last election, we've got a government of national unity. Business cheers because hopefully we'll get some common sense business policies, but nothing. So now what's starting to happen? Big companies are closing. We've seen recently the closure of ArcelorMittal, Anglo Gold, Goodyear, Glencore, Ford, that's been here for generations, cutting back on people. Even some of the government's own investments, which were ridiculous. PIC investing in Daybreak Farms, they're going to retrench 2,200 people. It's a jobs bloodbath. It's an economic bloodbath. Where's the president? Nowhere. He's quietly quit the economy as well. Who's managing the economy? Who's setting economic policy? God alone knows. Then, of course, the hot one of the moment, law and order, the Mkhwanazi affair. General Mkhwanazi told how there's crime syndicates that are working with senior political people, and he's got dockets to prove it. This was possibly the last time that we saw the president acting in any way presidential, when he called for the Madlanga Commission. Rather than let justice law take its course, he must have a speedy commission of inquiry that'll only take a year. Well, that's not happening. It's been absolutely sabotaged from within. We don't know when this commission is going to start. We don't know what it's going to cover. Parliament tried an ad hoc committee to investigate these allegations. The ANC puts Soviet Lechaniani in charge of that. That ad hoc committee seems to have fallen apart. Where's the president? Quietly quit on law and order. In the meantime, people get killed here in sort of staggering numbers, but the president is nowhere to be found on law and order. He's even quit on the ANC. There are mass killings in rural districts and municipalities as people see the end of the ANC. They see the writing on the wall, and they need to get to the public purse before they get voted out at the next local government elections. They're killing each other for those positions. The ANC is going to lose the metros. All the polls show that they will. The metros are a disgrace, run by the ANC in rickety coalitions. Instead of holding those people to account, nothing. It's going to kill the ANC at next year's local government elections. The president knows in a couple of months' time we've got the G20 meeting in Johannesburg, apparently. Well, my lord, we better buy a lot of paint, because this place is literally, you can't hide it from delegations. I think the one bright spot is that, so many of those leaders will send some arbitrary functionary in their place, because Johannesburg is just a disgrace. And you put that on show, it's going to hurt the brand. But where's the president? We saw him drive around Johannesburg, in which he lives. And he saw for the first time that the traffic lights weren't working, and there's potholes everywhere, and the lights don't come on, and the water doesn't run out of the taps. Even old compromised veterans of the ANC are saying, this is really bad. And these are people that helped to kill the place. When Naledi Pandor says this is a horror show, but where's the president? Quietly quit the ANC as well. So what does it mean when your leader quietly quits? I explained to you about quiet quitting. And in that context, we weren't talking about the boss quietly quitting. Well, let's just think about it. It's probably has three phases when the leader gets overwhelmed and quietly quits. Number one is it's autopilot. It's a bit like when the boss goes on leave, or when the captain of the team misses a match. There's autopilot, there's muscle memory. You still pitch up at work, you still do your job, and for a while, even though that office in the corner is empty, there's the expectation that we know the rules because we used to have a leader and he set the rules, so fine, we'll wait until he gets back. Well, we passed that stage. We passed autopilot. The next phase is when certain things need leadership and some people start to emerge. We are now deep into this phase 2. We are seeing Mkhwanazi, for example, becoming the face of law and order in the absence of the president, in the absence of a police minister. We saw people like AfriForum taking the lead on foreign policy. Leaders start to emerge in this void. People that were there start saying, okay, guys, let's do this, let's do that. So leaders are starting to emerge. The problem with that is that there's no coordination of what they're doing. Everybody's just doing what they're doing. I mean, who's setting our foreign policy? Zane Dangor, the Director General, he seems to be the only one that has any continuity or any leadership. But in the meantime, there's no coordinated affair. We've sort of said to America, we're your friend, we're not your friend. Iran, we're your friend, but we also, who knows? No leadership. Everybody starts saying their own thing. That's phase 2. We're in it now. What's the third phase? Well, the third phase is where you say, we need another leader. And that can happen in a couple of ways. Either somebody the strongest of the leaders that emerges takes over. You have a palace revolution, as they call it. It's not quite a coup, but somebody within the palace knocks over the king and says, I'm now the king. We've got a version of that going on at the moment as people try and scurry to look like they're in charge. You know, we've got the court jester, Fikile Mbalula, trying to act like he's sort of a leader. Don't know. Paul Mashatile's lying low because there's too much graft allegations surrounding him. But somebody's going to try and get to be the leader and to be the spokesperson or, you know, the totem for the country. And that will play its ultimate course in 2027 when the ANC has their leadership conference. But we are still 2 years away from that. What happens for 2 years? There's also the spectre of the motion of no confidence, because many of our political parties have attached their brand to the failing ANC. How long can that carry on for? Well, we already know there's talks about motions of no confidence. And in the absence of President Ramaphosa, it's very hard to see how he defends his motion of no confidence. Does it suit any of those parties to have an absent president? What do the GNU partners do? Do they go and vote with Mkhonto Wesizwe, EFF, to get rid of Cyril Ramaphosa? Who knows? Because we've got a leadership vacuum, and people may not like the outcome. But I can tell you one person right now who would love a motion of no confidence, and that is quite clearly President Cyril Ramaphosa himself. Because I think now that the money is out of the couch, I think he wouldn't mind just lying back on the couch and watching television. Because he's absent from his job. He has quit. It's quiet as he does everything else. We are a country adrift, and it's just going to be a very bumpy period until some leadership emerges. Thank you for joining me on the weekly update. Subscribe to the channel,